we are going to start out by creating a new project. We're going to create the project from a project template and use the command line app template. And we're going to give it a name. Alright. As you may recall, when we are declaring an array, we need to declare the type of the array, and then we need to use the square bracket to indicate that this is not just a normal variable, this is indeed an array variable. So here I've typed int and then the square brackets, which means that I'm about to declare an int array. We're going to call this int array to be very descriptive in our variable name. And then we're going to initialize it. As you may recall, we have two options when initializing an array. One option is to write new and then int. And then inside of the square brackets here, what we're going to write is the number of spots that we want in our array. So this is the number of integers that we would like to have in this particular array. So we could write here 10 and then terminate the line with a semicolon. And this then means that I've declared an array here and I've called it int array, and I've initialized it with 10 spots. So there are 10 places in this array. This way the array will be initialized with its default values in each spot, and for int array this default value is 0. I had another option if I wanted to initialize the array with some specific values. So I could instead have opted to use this notation where I write the specific numbers that I would like in my array. So in doing this, actually what I'm doing is I'm telling Java that I want to create a new array of integers, and this array of integers should have 4 spots or 4 places, and in those places I'd like 12 on index 0, 13 on index 1, 14 on index 2, and 15 on index 3. So I can validate the behavior of Java in this sense that I can try and print out the contents of my array. And if I wanted to print out the contents of my array, often what I would do is I'd utilize a loop. For the sake of this example, I'm going to utilize a for loop for that sake. So here we're going to declare for int I, so this is my initialization, and here I write int I equals 0. And the reason that I write int I equals 0 is that I want to start on index 0 in my array. We'll get back to that. I want to ensure that I cap I at the max index of the array. And the max index of the array was, as you recall, 1 less than the size of the array. And that is due to the nature of an array where the count of indices start at index 0 and stop at the length of the array minus 1. I can represent that in my for loop condition by saying that I less than int array dot length, and then in my update part of the for declaration I'm going to write I plus plus to have it increment once for each iteration that I make. Now here on int array dot length I could have of course just opted to write 4 because 4 is the length of my array. But just know that doing it this way makes our program exhibit a more dynamic behavior, and it makes our code easier to maintain. Because if I were to add another spot to the array up here, well, the length here is automatically updated, which means that I will automatically count to just below the length of the new array size. So there's that to consider when you're declaring for loops that you're using to loop across your arrays. And now for the actual looping. Now, in order to get something from an array, I need to use the array variable name. Then I need to place a square bracket and then the index that I'd like to access. Now, we're starting at 0 here with I equals 0. So if I put I in here, what's going to happen is that the first time that I run through this loop, I'll access spot 0 in the array, which is the first index where 12 should be. Then I'm going to do something about that value, obviously. And what we could do is we could try and print out the value. So we're going to system out print line or print ln. And then we're going to use another bracket here, like this. So what's going to happen here is that the first time that we're going through this loop, we'll access spot 0 of our int array. We'll hopefully print out the value 12. Then it's going to the update section. And then once we have updated, or the update statement, and then once we've updated I by incrementing it exactly 1, we're going to our continuation condition over here and checking if this Boolean expression here is still valid. If it is, then we're going to loop once more down here. We're taking another iteration, and this will continue until this is no longer true. And by that time, we should hopefully have gotten the last piece of our array printed to the screen. So let's try and execute this and see how it goes. And as you see, we've printed the contents of our array down here. Now, just to demonstrate my point earlier, you'll see that I can actually just add another, let's make it completely arbitrary, add another integer to the array, and my program will automatically adapt to the new array size, because I'm using this part here to determine the length of the int array up here, which will automatically adapt itself based on what I fill into the array.